Yeah, and let me just throw in here as we're saying this, because if you're not a part of the ProPresenter user group on Facebook, there is an official user group with, I don't know, 10, 20,000 members or whatever a part of it. And I'm a pretty active member of that, answering questions and seeing a lot of the questions that are coming through. And one of the common questions when Pro 7 came out, and still today is a common question, is how do I get 8 screens plus live stream on my computer? Or I'm having a problem and ProPresenter keeps crashing, but I'm trying to do 5 streams and stream and do this and this and this. And yes, ProPresenter can do all of it if your computer can handle it.
Yeah.
So there is a big if
Yes.
there, because not every computer is created equal. Not every computer has the same hardware inside of it and the same processing ability inside of it. So I do want to say, yes, it is possible, but it might not always be the best solution. So definitely check out Resi. Definitely try live streaming inside ProPresenter, especially if you're just getting started. It's a great way to get started. But a hardware video switcher might be a better solution. A hardware live stream encoder might be a better solution. The one thing that, you know, Brad Weston says, and you've heard before, is what's the best camera you have available is the one that's with you. So the best camera most of us have is our phone, right? And that's the best camera we have because that's the one that's with us. And now ProPresenter might be the best live stream encoder because it's the one that you have with you at any time. You don't have to bring a dedicated piece of hardware to some event that you're randomly doing outside in the summertime, or that you're doing in a kid's room instead of your main space, because you can bring a laptop to that room, but you can't bring your video switching rack from your sound booth or production area to that other room. And so the best encoder you have is the one that's with you. And so that might be why ProPresenter is the best encoder for you.
Yeah, that's great, man.
Well put.
Yeah, very well put. And yeah, and like you said, if your computer isn't powerful enough, maybe an encoder, going with a hardware encoder in conjunction with ProPresenter is going to be the best option for you.
And Resi does have some really nice encoders too, hardware encoders.
Yep. Yeah, the Resi Array, I believe, is their smallest encoder. I think it's right around $1,000, which is, if you compare that apples to apples with a lot of the other popular hardware encoders out there, it's not, the price is not ridiculous by any stretch.
No.
It's in the same line.
Yep.
I've heard of $80,000 encoders, so it's very affordable for a large organization. But yeah, and so can you jump into a little bit, Brad? I mean, you're over at Watermark, right? And the relationship between so how did you get started with Renewed Vision? Is really, like, I want to go a little personal on this because I've seen you a lot. You do a lot of videos that have helped the public in general. For me personally, the one that has helped me the most that you were a part of, I think it has almost 100,000 views. I was looking at it today, was the drum enclosure video, right?
Yeah.
That thing is so popular. It's been shared so many times, coming up with all the math in order to build this drum enclosure with the curved glass front, right? Or plexiglass. And so I want to know a little bit about you and how your history is, how you got started in the church world and kind of bringing you into today, and what has really inspired you to be a resource.
Sure. Yeah, so that video for me, out of all of the videos I've ever done, is kind of the most mind-blowing one, just because of the physical end product that it has turned into. You know, there's a lot of people who use ProPresenter, and it's cool to know that they're using it and understand it and all of that kind of stuff, but to like walk into Central or walk into any random church out there that has built one and see a drum enclosure and like, yeah, we watched the video and we built this. And like, that's crazy, you know? So that's like a different level of like impact of like seeing all of that. And I know that there's a whole lot of drummers out there who probably hate me because they're now stuck inside a cage. But I'm a drummer and I'm thankful for it. So, you know, there's two different ways you can see that one for sure. But
all the sound guys love you.
Yes.
Yes. The sound guys love you. Yes.
Yeah. Well, the pastors love you, right? They don't want to have like
That's true.
cymbals in their ears the whole.
And all the other musicians love you.
Yes. Yeah,
And those that-
exactly.
Those that still do choirs love you even more.
Choirs,
So-
yes, choirs, man.
Choirs.
Choirs. Yeah. We did a choir for a long time.
So
Rebels.
I haven't been a part of church that had a choir since I was living in Florida going to school. Yeah, it's been
Oh
quite
yeah, I also saw that. So
Yeah.
you're a Full Sail graduate.
Yeah, so I went to Full Sail, got a degree in digital media, got an associate's degree because back then they didn't have a bachelor's program at all. So I had a crazy wild time down in Florida. So I lived there. I got my associate's degree in 13 months because the school runs this crazy 24 hours a day, 7-day a week schedule and system that most people can't comprehend, how much time we were
It's
in.
pretty wild.
Yeah. 40 hours in the classroom.
I actually I went there too, in case you
Oh,
guys
did you?
didn't know.
Oh, I did not
Yeah.
know that. What year were you there?
I graduated 2002.
Okay, so you were there
2001 to
just
2002.
before me.
Yep. I did the same thing, 13 months in recording engineering.
Yeah.
It was
And
nuts.
you actually did something with it, and you're giving the school a good name, unlike some of the other recording artists, recording arts
I
graduates.
can tell you that I would say that probably 5 people in my class of 200 actually do what they're doing.
Yeah.
Or do what they went for. Unfortunately.
Yeah, well,
So-
and back then, that was the biggest program in the school, and I think had the worst reputation is in the industry, at least, of like
did.
follow through. Where I think some of the other programs were much smaller and have a better track record, ongoing. At least like digital media, had a really strong. I don't know about still today. I have to go check out fullsailsucks.com and see what they're saying yet today because
Yeah.
that was
I do not recommend people to go there. It's insanely expensive now for what you get.
yeah.
But
I
I don't want
remember-
to bad talk them. I had a great
You
experience.
just did.
though.
You just
Yeah.
did, and
You're right, I did.
live with it.
Don't go there.
Okay, so speaking of somebody telling you to not go there, so this goes kind of into my story of what I did in Florida. So when I lived in Florida, I wanted to be a part of a local church. And so I wanted to find a church to be a part of. I asked around at the church that I was going to if anybody knew any good churches in Orlando, in the Orlando area. And somebody mentioned this church called Northland, and I had never heard of it before. And so me and my mom went on a school visit, and we went and checked out this church while we were there for the school visit. And went into the church. It was a fairly large main auditorium. I would say probably 1,500 seats or something like that. So it wasn't crazy huge, but it wasn't small either. Something that I was fairly familiar with. It didn't feel like way too big. But I get in there. I'm a musician. I play a lot of different instruments. And and at that time I knew more about sound than I did about media. And so I'm listening to the mix and watching the musicians on the stage, and I hear an acoustic guitar in the mix, and I don't see an acoustic guitarist on the stage. And I'm like, what in the world is going on here? And then on one of the side screens, an acoustic guitarist shows up, and I'm like, where is this guy? Because that camera shot is not of anyone in this room. Where is this person, and what in the world is going on? And what I found out is that, so this was in 2003 that I was down there, maybe late 2002. They were doing multi-site at this church, but they were doing live multi-site with a unified click between multiple locations.
That long ago.
Oh
Yeah.
my.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
I don't even want to think about how you would do that back then.
Yeah, so that acoustic guitarist was in a high school auditorium that was a couple miles down the street. And he was playing with a full other band in that room, and they were sending multiple channels of audio both ways, asynchronous audio and asynchronous video. So they're sending a fully switched feed back and forth between those two places, so they could show video from that other location in the main room. They could show the main room in the other location, and they were using those different instruments in both places. So they did stuff like they do duets, and one singer would be in one building and the other singer would be in another building. They did a choir where they had a choir in the main building, and then they had a screen on stage at the high school that was just a dedicated video shot of the choir singing with their band in the high school auditorium. And so that was the church that I got to be a part of. And so that was in 2003. By the time I left that church, or while I was there one Sunday, I walked up into the video room, and they're like, "Hey, Brad, check this out. We're streaming to the internet." And I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking. Like, that doesn't. What do you mean we're streaming to the internet?" And it said, we're sending video from here online, and you can watch it live at your house. And the worship pastor's at home, and he's like testing the stream out this morning and watching live at home. And that was in 2004. And just for like frame of reference, YouTube didn't exist until 2006.
Right.
And so this was 2 years before the birth of YouTube, that they're live streaming, doing multi-site video and audio around the city of Orlando. So some really cool stuff. So when the reason I brought that up is because when I went to check out that church and said I wanted to volunteer, the tech director said to me, he's like, "Oh, what school are you going to?" I was like, "Oh, I'm going to Full Sail. It's going to be awesome." He's like, "That school sucks. You shouldn't go there. You're going to get a terrible education." But then he said, "Don't worry, we'll take care of you, and we'll make sure you're covered no matter what." And they did, and he's still a mentor to today. And a lot of the people that I worked with there are still good friends that have helped me out and taught me a ton while I was in school and a ton after school. And I got some really incredible experiences when I was down there.
That's awesome.
So, I mean, that kind of birthed, that kind of started the trajectory of where I'm at today, of basically, like, I felt like I got a really big gift of that education and those experiences that I knew a lot of other people didn't get. When I was growing up in the church, I was the teenager who was like digging through the old tech storage closets of old gear and trying to like piece it together to do as many cool things as I possibly could. But I had no one who was teaching me any of that stuff. I didn't have anybody who like took me under their wing and showed me anything. I had a couple random people along the way, but I didn't have anybody who was like, "No, here's the right way," or "Here's the why behind why we do any of this stuff." So when I got that education, I really wanted to share that. And that was at the kind of the advent and popularity of podcasting, and video podcasting in particular. And so there are some video podcasts out at that time. So This Week in Tech with Leo Laporte, and Techzilla with Patrick Norton. If these are throwbacks for anybody to remember any of these, but these were like the beginning of this era that we're in now, of YouTube, and all of that kind of stuff. Well, back then, you couldn't upload a video to YouTube that was longer than 5 minutes. They had a limitation. I think it might have been 3 minutes at one point, but it was super, super short content. You couldn't upload anything long. And so the only way to do long form video content was to do it through a video podcast. So I started video podcasting in, I think, 2007. And I started a video podcast called churchmediadesign.tv. And I produced over 100 episodes of that show, teaching things like Photoshop and After Effects, InDesign, live streaming, all this stuff. And so that's how I got my start in teaching people at churches. And so the goal was just to help people in churches know where to find. So I did a segment where I talked about, here's where you could find some cool free content, and talked about like stock image sites before Unsplash was even a thing that people know about these days. Back in the day, the main stock image site was this site called sxc.hu, the stock exchange. And it was like the most popular place to get free high quality images on the internet. And when I found it, it was like this, like, whoa, this is a gold mine. I need to tell people about this. And so I would share that kind of stuff on the show. And I started doing all these tutorials. And because of that, I got an email from Brad Weston from Renewed Vision saying, "Hey, we have a new, I need you to sign this NDA, but we have a new version of ProPresenter coming out. And I'm curious if you'd be interested in doing all the tutorials for us." And so because of doing that podcast, he reached out to some random church tech guy in West Michigan who wasn't associated with their company at all, and hired me to do the next round of their videos. which was pretty mind-blowing for me as a ProPresenter user, because the previous person who was doing their tutorials was a worship recording artist, Steve Fee,
Oh,
who,
really?
yeah, he was the person who did it prior to me. So I was like, there's like some CCM guy who's famous and writes worship songs and is a
Yeah.
worship leader at North Point, and I'm doing his job now. Like, that was kind of crazy for me. So yeah, so that's how that got started, and I did a good enough job that they kept asking me to do more of them.
That's awesome, man. And I love how
Yeah.
organic
You've
that
done.
was.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't like this thing that you were just trying to like, yeah, I'm going to create this following and I'm going to, you know, like having all these end goals in mind. It was really just, I love this and I think other people love it. So let me just put it out there for them and teach them and show them. Cause I come from the same thing, man. I was lucky enough to have mentors in my life. And so I, in the present tense, love to be a mentor to other people. I love to answer questions. I love to take time to train. I love to take phone calls. If somebody asks me, I almost always say yes. You know, it's all about capacity for me at this point, but I just love that, man. I love how organic that was and how in turn, not only have you become a resource, but other people are reaching out to you so that you can continue to be a better resource. And that's what I see there is that because you're naturally
Mhm.
already in your gifting, you know, people are going to want that gifting to continue to grow because so many of us benefit from it.
Yeah, it's been incredible, and I mean, like crazy things that just don't normally happen. So there was a conference that happened for quite a few years called the Echo Conference that happened in Dallas, Texas, and the guys from Igniter Media. And at that time, there was a magazine called Collide Magazine that was a church media magazine put on this conference called the Echo Conference. And when I heard about the first conference, I reached out to the conference and said, "Hey, I'd like to be a speaker at your conference. Would you have me?" And which is insane. Who does that? Like, hey, it's so impressed with myself that I'm just gonna reach out and say I should be a speaker at your conference. And so I luckily they didn't think I was too much of an idiot, teenager at that point, or 20 something, however old I was. And they said yes. And because of that, I ended up speaking at every year of that conference and got to, meet some amazing people and be a part of that event, as well as the first Gurus of Tech event. That
Mhm.
event transformed. So I was a part of that first Gurus event in Louisville, and then that kind of morphed and transitioned along the way, and now is the modern day Philo conference that I'm
Right.
still a part of to this day, and love Todd and the team that do that one as well. And those are, again, those crazy, like I not an end goal in mind, just really wanting to help resource churches and help people along the way. And it's just been cool to be a part of all of those things.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I
Well,
know
you've
I've
done a
been,
great job, Brad.
Yes.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Michael. Appreciate that.
with
I
that. Yeah.
back in 2008 when I was at Central, I was starting to learn my video editing skills. I was watching Church Media Designs,
Oh, nice.
and I learned I learned a few After Effects tricks from you, so
Yeah,
appreciate
that's
it.
awesome.
I'm going to have to dig back into some of those After Effects videos, man. Because
Yeah.
mostly what I've seen from you it has been ProPresenter related. Like I said, the drum enclosure. But I didn't know you had like, some Adobe
Yeah,
videos available because
yeah, they're old.
I'm always looking at those. Yeah, yeah. Obviously, at this point,
Yeah.
there's so many different versions. There's a Creative Cloud, all of that. But yeah, man, I really appreciate everything that you've given to the industry in general. And seeing you at conferences as well. It's just awesome to see. And you know, church tech has really grown. It's become more accessible to so many different sizes of churches. So even if you're in like a small 100-person church, you may find ProPresenter in that church, where years ago that may not have been the case. You wouldn't have seen a digital mixer at a small church, right? But nowadays everybody has a digital mixer.
Hmm.
It's kind of the standard now because it's so affordable. And so
Right.
I feel like resources are going to continue to be needed. People like yourself who are going to teach and help onboard people into this new era as we continue to implement more and more technology into what we do.
For sure.
Yeah. Any other questions you guys have for Brad?
I don't, but Pro Presenter, I just got to shout out to them, and Brad for being a part of that because, I go to a small church where we don't have, I mean, it's a great tool and it's a great tool for big churches, but to take a small church with your worship leader and your tech director are really the same guy. We have one guy on staff that takes care of all that. And sometimes I sit back on Sunday and I look at what we're producing with one guy on staff. It's crazy. I mean, I just can't believe what we can do.
Yeah.
And Pro Presenter's right at the middle of the product that we can produce, that tool alone, and we can produce something that's of very high quality and looks really good and do a great job of it with limited amount of staff. And that's, to me, that's Pro Presenter. I mean, that's just at its core, It's kind of like the State Farm commercial. Jake from State Farm, right?
Yeah.
Everyone thinks he makes this custom program just for them. And he goes, no, man, it's available for everybody.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well,
Anyway,
all right.
Yeah.
So Pro Presenter 7 is out right now, right? It came out this year. Tell us a little bit about how do people purchase Pro Presenter? Where do they go? Where can they find it? And give us a little direction there.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, like some of the biggest things, well, you can just go to ProPresenter.com and download it. And one of the great things about ProPresenter compared to a lot of other programs out there, so a lot of us are used to, 10-day trials, 30-day trials with programs where you have this limited time to check it out and figure out if it's right for you. ProPresenter is run very differently that you can download ProPresenter on as many computers as you want and use it forever for free. The only time that you need to pay for it is if you're actually sending content, presenting content. So if you want to show content on a audience screen or a stage screen, then you need to purchase a license for ProPresenter. But if you're creating content, you don't ever need to buy ProPresenter. So every volunteer on your team can download ProPresenter and use it on their computers at home forever for free. They don't need to pay for it. Your church doesn't even need to pay for a campus license unless you're presenting on more than one computer. So if your church only or organization is only presenting on one screen, in one room with one computer, you only need to buy a license for one, even if everyone on your staff team has ProPresenter installed, because you only need to license that one computer. So that's a really powerful thing that I think a lot of people forget about because pastors and worship leaders can be working on stuff at home and send those files around, and you don't have to license that computer for somebody to be able to be working on it at home. So
yeah, that's another great
Yeah,
point.
that's amazing.
Something that
Yeah.
we didn't bring up. I remember always working on presentations, as a TD or an assistant to a TD, working on things from home, especially depending on the lead pastor, the teaching pastor. Sometimes you don't get slides till Saturday night. And instead of rushing Sunday morning, it's like, hey, let me work on it, tonight after dinner. And and I love how ProPresenter, you can just package it all and it's all put together and you send it. And when you open it on another computer with ProPresenter, it just opens and it's ready to go.
Yep.
And so that's something that I love about is the usability of it, how you can work on things remotely and then later put it on the screen.
So Brad, can you what's the
Which is pretty much, yeah.
You can upgrade from 6 to 7 at a lower cost than starting off right with 7, or
yeah,
how does that work?
so a lot of that is dependent on the sales team. So you need to kind of reach out. There's and I don't even know if any of them would be good anymore because there was deeper discounts. If you had upgraded to 6 within a month of 7 coming out, you got a way deeper discount, or a week or whatever before the announcement. But I know that there is still an upgrade path from 6 to 7 where it is discounted a little bit more. ProPresenter 7 is different than 6. You're buying the software outright, but you're only going to get updates to that software for a year. And then after that year, you won't get updates anymore unless you pay for ProPresenter Plus. So you get ProPresenter Plus is the maintenance contract. And so that maintenance contract basically is saying you get updates and upgrades and all of that stuff for the life of your maintenance contract. And when your maintenance contract runs out, you keep everything you got. We don't take it away from you. You don't lose access to it. You just lose access to anything that's coming out in the future. So unlike a subscription model like, Netflix or Spotify, when you stop subscribing to those services, you can't watch any of that content again. You don't get to keep that. But with ProPresenter Plus, when you're doing a maintenance contract, you're paying for upgrades to a certain point, and then when you stop paying for those upgrades or for that maintenance contract, you just get to keep whatever you have. So if you run out of ProPresenter Plus and you feel like, the version we have right now is rock solid and we really like it and we don't really see a need for any future updates, you don't have to worry about updating the program and you could just stay with what you have. But if you see the value in all of the updates that they're coming out with, which they're coming out with tons of them all the time, then you will want to continue that ProPresenter Plus contract. So there is a new fee that's ongoing, and I know a lot of churches, are hesitant to be a part of another subscription model because everybody's a part of those. But there is a big value add in it, and you can see the value add of what they've done so far because they actually held back features from ProPresenter 6. So they had like dual translations of Bibles ready to go for quite a long time. And they had to hold that back for ProPresenter 7 because they, as a company, needed a way to monetize that upgrade of this big feature that they were releasing, because they, as a company, need to stay afloat and continue to have income to be able to keep producing it, because they're not a huge business for the software that they're building and the user base they are. They're a quite small company of developers compared to a lot of other software that you use. And so now they don't ever have to hold back features. It's never a question of like, well, financially it makes sense to hold this back until X or Y point. Now it's as soon as it's done and ready and we feel like it's ready for people to use, we're going to release it. And so that's a really great part of ProPresenter Plus that some people might have a hard time seeing at first, but I think is a huge value. And again, I am a contract employee. I am not a employee of Renewed Vision, so I just do tutorials for them on the side. And so I freely speak, and I still see a lot of value there in all of that. So so that's where you can grab that. The one thing, if you guys don't mind me going off on a tangent of something that I think is really important for us in these days of trying to do a whole lot more, so doing online and in person, and probably having a lot less volunteers, because of the season that we're in. There's some people who aren't ready to come back and serve, or we've lost people from our churches or organizations because we talked about X or Y subject, or we stated some sort of stance on X or Y subject, and we lost some people from our teams. We're trying to do more with less, right? Is a common thing that churches are trying to do. And the thing that I keep coming back to and that ProPresenter integrates with is this guy, a Stream Deck. So if you're not familiar with Stream Decks, man, these things are
get on it.
The tool to end all tools these days. I don't want to like put that much value on it, but it's pretty amazing. So a Stream Deck, if you're not familiar with them, and I don't know, have you guys talked about these in the past on the podcast before?
We haven't, but we are familiar with them.
We have not.
Okay. Yeah. So
Yes.
For those of you who aren't familiar, Stream Decks were created by Elgato for gamers to be able to do their gaming live streams, and made it easy to like switch scenes inside OBS streaming software and encoder, and like press play on video clips or start or stop Spotify or do different things so that you could produce a gaming live stream, as one person. But a awesome group of, I think, Swedes at bitfocus.io created this program called Companion. And Companion works with Stream Decks and allows you to control production gear with your Stream Deck. And so you can control all sorts of different production gear, including ProPresenter and ATEM switchers and the X32 and VidiUs and TV sets and projectors, and you can send MIDI notes, and you can do all sorts of stuff all from this device, and you can stack those actions together to do some really, really impressive things. So like this current screen that I have here is set up for my, and I think we're doing video, right? So this current screen is set up for my video switcher. So I got a row of preview buttons and I got a row of program buttons to switch between my 8 inputs on my video switcher. Instead of spending, you know, the, what is it, $2,000 or $3,000 for the ATEM control panel for a video switcher, the Stream Deck XL is $250, and I have a hardware controller that can do everything that the ATEM controller can do except for a T-bar. That's the only thing that's missing. And most churches don't need to use a T-bar. Let's just be honest. That is, you know, manual fade transitions are not a super common task, and we probably could all get away with not doing those. And you can do way more than that. So on this, the XL has 32 buttons on it, but you actually have 99 pages of 32 buttons on the XL. They have, the regular one has 15 buttons, and then they have a little small one that's got 6 buttons. And so like I have an action that I'll just walk you through, and this is where it gets really super fun. So I have a button that when you press it, it fades out playback music in the house. So we have like house playback music coming through Spotify. And then we have online music that is playing through ProPresenter. So this is like copyright free music for our live stream, so we don't get in any trouble before our gathering starts. That's playing back to online. So that's different music for online than in person. So we got 2 different sources playing back on our soundboard. And so when I press a button on the Stream Deck, it's going to fade out both of those for me automatically on the X32. It actually can move my faders for me and do an automated fade on the X32 over time, which is one of the only ways that you can actually do that sort of thing. You can't even do that on the X32 by itself. And so using this, you can actually automate your faders to fade in and fade out over time, which is pretty incredible. So I'm fading those out, and when they fade down, it stops the audio in Spotify and in ProPresenter. And all of that is on a different computer.
That's sweet.
So my sound guy's pressing that button.
Yeah.
It's fading those down, stopping those, and then it's pulling up a new scene on my X32. It's telling my fake waves rack on my main stage setup to go to the right scene with the right auto-tuning key. And it's starting tracks for our band all in one button press. And it's doing that all perfectly in time. So it's fade out, quick snap to new scene, start these things all right in line. You're never going to have like, I went too fast and my ProPresenter person didn't hit pause on whatever they were supposed to hit pause on, or this other thing didn't get switched. It all works perfectly together, and one person controls multiple things all at the same time. So it's really, really incredible. You can do the same thing with video. So you could have your ProPresenter operator press a button that fades out your house lights, switches your ATEM to show the video input, and then turns the faders up on the soundboard to the right level, and then plays a video clip and does all of that within milliseconds. So that you can press one button and it controls all the different things. So one person is in control of that transition, instead of trying to organize like, okay, are you ready? Are you ready? Okay,
Sure.
1, 2, 3, let's go, you know.
Yeah. Or you need comm, right? So you need a whole comm system.
Even doing that over comms, you still have to count it out and say, is everybody ready to go? And this kind of puts the power of what we're trying to do in our production environment is we're trying to put the power of the position in that person's hands, even if they don't have direct control of it. So my audio guy now has full control over all audio things, even if it's not all on the soundboard. So if it's on somebody's computer, they have control of that. You know, they have control of that on somebody else's computer. My video guy has control of video stuff that he needs that might be different than what my ProPresenter operator does. So my video guy doing video switching can hit a button to pull up lower third titles inside ProPresenter that are just for the live stream without ever having to bother my ProPresenter operator. So they
That's
can just
great.
press a button and it just does that in ProPresenter automatically for us. So we're just trying to put the power of the position in their hands. So we run 3 different stream decks. One's at ProPresenter position, one's at video switching, and one's at audio.
That's really, really
The
cool.
other thing people don't think about is power sequencing. Like we're beginning a project at Central where the guys want to incorporate Stream Deck into a classroom and do some of those functions that you're talking about. But, you know, anything IP related, like Middle Atlantic makes power strip sequencers now that are IP controlled. Oh, they've been doing it for a while, but you could install one of those in your rack and trigger your whole power sequencing of your AV system with one of those.
With the Stream Deck.
So we're with Stream Deck.
You know, I this is the first I've heard of Stream Deck. So of course I'm the guy that doesn't get all this stuff all the time. But all I can picture is Eric, our worship leader, on stage with one of those things, another piece screwed onto his mic stand, starting the whole service. So Eric, if you watch this, I'm telling you right now, you ain't getting one of these on stage. It ain't happening.
Guess what? He can do it from his phone because they
Yeah.
phone interface, so you don't even have to have the hardware to do it.
Is it hacked into your
Yeah.
system? Oh, I love it.
Yeah. So, and like Michael was saying, this is all controlling gear that has to be connected to the network. So it's sending network commands to all of these different pieces of video gear. But when you start adding things like if you add in a smart hub, like a smart video hub, where you have all of your video lines for all of your screens around a building, and you can send any signal to any screen in your whole building, and you have, let's say, 10 inputs and you have 40 outputs, you know, or even 10 outputs, that you can press a button and say, I want outputs 1, 2, and 3 to be this, and 3, 5, 6, and 7 to be this. And you can do that super easily with one button press to change all of that stuff. It's really, really powerful. We just switched over to a different lighting program just so that we could control lighting over the network, so that I could do that from anywhere as well. And like you said, we're doing a remodel in our kids' classroom right now, which is super cool, and I'm super excited about it. And the whole thing's going to be controlled by a Stream Deck. So we're going to control the screen in the room is now a big 75-inch TV instead of a projector. And we'll be able to control the volume of all of the stuff that's in that, which will control the volume of the stuff in the room. We'll be able to switch video inputs on the TV itself, and we'll be able to control ProPresenter, which is one of the video inputs on that TV, all from a Stream Deck installed into a wall, basically as a wall panel. So like a little wall.
It's pretty incredible.
That is incredible. That is great.
I think it's important to know too that does have to run on a PC, right?
It can run on a
Mac
or Linux, and it actually can run on a Raspberry Pi.
Really?
Yeah, I was going to say you can have a little tiny PC.
Yeah, it has to run on a computer, so it doesn't hook directly into the network. But what computer you use is basically anything. So you can use Mac, PC, Linux.
Yeah.
There is a version that runs on Raspberry Pi. So there are some people who created a little custom box that is like a Stream Deck and a Raspberry Pi underneath it. And then you plug in an Ethernet cable and it powers the whole thing over Ethernet. And you just have this box with one Ethernet cable plugged into it, and that's your whole control surface, which is pretty incredible. So.
That's cool. Well, thanks for sharing that for sure. I think
and the old guys go, not one more thing.
Another thing.
Yeah. Well, and here's the fun thing about it. So is Companion's free, and you can test it without buying the hardware. So you don't have to buy a Stream Deck to play with Companion. And so you can go download Companion and go see, like, does any of my gear actually work with it that I have in my church? You know, like, okay, we have ProPresenter, and I know I can control ProPresenter, and you can do some really cool stuff when you're controlling ProPresenter with it. You know, because I can actually trigger like video files and different things in the background that my operator never has to worry about. So I could actually, a couple weeks ago, we played a video of a person playing keys at home who was in quarantine on a screen on our stage. And then our ProPresenter operator was still just running lyrics, but that video file that was synced up to our tracks and all of that kind of stuff was on this other TV, and my audio person was able to hit play on that video file and the tracks with a Stream Deck, and that was all kind of done in the background on the Mac running ProPresenter, which was really cool. But you can test all of this out for free, and you don't have to worry about and just see if any of it's beneficial. And if it's like, you know what, I don't see how this could really help out our use case, then don't worry about it. But especially if you're using ATEM switchers and ProPresenter, those two things to me are a real good indicator of that it would be useful for your church. Because spending the money on a true ATEM control surface is, to me, just kind of a waste most of the time, because why would I spend $2,000 on a control surface that can only control one piece of gear when I could spend $250 on something that could control that piece of gear plus all sorts of other stuff?
Yeah.
Right.
So what's the programming like? Fairly simple?
Yeah, it's really, you basically create a button, and then you can create commands for the button press or the button release. So you can turn it into kind of a toggle button, like a mute, where you have a function that happens when you press it down and when you press it again when it releases. But then you just give it commands, and there's all of these modules for all your different pieces of hardware. So
okay, so the modules are all pre-written.
Yep. So there's modules but some of the modules are just like a MIDI module that just sends out MIDI notes. So any program or anything that can receive MIDI, you can then control with it. And you can send whatever MIDI note to whatever MIDI channel you want at whatever MIDI velocity you want when you press that button. So you could actually, I could use a Stream Deck to play main stage and actually play a piano and play a chord with a button. So if I wanted to trigger chords from the sound booth to play pad under my teacher talking, at the end of the message, I could do that with a Stream Deck if you really want. But some of them are limited to all this does is for my Teradek video, which is my hardware video encoder that we use for live streaming, all it does is start stream, start record, stop stream, and stop record. Those are the only 4 functions that module does. But that's still better than me going down and pressing the record buttons on that little tiny box. And instead, I have a button on my Stream Deck that just says start stream, and I just press it and it starts streaming.
Right.
So it just kind of depends on what the module is, but you add the modules in, and then you just add commands from the module and choose what commands you want. You can stack multiple commands together, or you can just use one command on a button. So
cool.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for sharing that. I know that Michael's been working on a few projects with the Stream Deck. So I love that you brought that up. We've been looking at one for the church that I go to as well. Because when you have the ability to do so much with just that one thing, it's just priceless, man. I just feel like if you have that in your workflow, it makes things easier for your volunteers too, to wrap their minds around, especially if they're not very tech savvy. Just hit this button and it'll take care of it, But right now at the church that I go to, when we're right before we go into the message, we do community time where people are talking. And so we have Spotify going, but you have to fade out Spotify before you hit play in ProPresenter on the sermon bumper, right? So because the audio is coming from the same source. So that feature within itself, to be able to just fade out Spotify before you hit that bumper, that's amazing to me.
Yeah. We do this. We used to do the same thing. We called it Life Together. And that happened in the middle of our gatherings where we just had this coffee break. And again, like you said, those transitions are really tough to get right of okay, I got to fade this down. Okay. Hit pause. Okay. Got to put this back up. Okay. Hit play. And to be able to not have to do all of those commands, but be able to just hit a button that does all of that together is really powerful. Now I will say not every module can do that. So the X32 module has it built in that it can move your faders and do that automated fade. And that might be in a beta release of Companion right now. I don't know that that's actually in the official release, but you can download the beta ones and they're very stable. But it kind of depends on what your soundboard is, and is that functionality built into the module for your soundboard, or is your soundboard even available. So
Capable to
that's why
do it.
it's worth
Right.
just checking out ahead of time. But
Well, that's awesome, man. Well, thanks for so much for sharing that. For people listening, if you need information on ProPresenter, on even Stream Deck, any of the things that we talked about today, absolutely reach out to us because we'd love to be a resource to you. And Brad, I know you love to be a resource as well. Where can people find you if again, you mentioned the ProPresenter, a group on Facebook. So that's a good place to just be in community with other people using ProPresenter. But where else can you be found as a resource?
yeah, so you can find all of the training tutorials on YouTube or at propresenter.com, and you can find all of the official videos there. I also have a website where I help resource churches with graphics and media, because one of my main jobs is being a creative director and creating content. And so I'm creating graphics and content for our church, and we give all of that away for free. And then I've opened that up to other churches from around the world. And so, especially going into the Christmas season, there is a new good friend that I have in England who creates these incredible scripture storytelling videos every Christmas. And that just, I think 11 or 12 of them that are like all of your quintessential Christmas passages, but they're read by British people in England in like old cool churches that are just like picturesque environments with great soundtracks under them, and they're 100% free, and you can download them and use them. And so you can find all of that at churchmediadrop.com. And so we have, if you're looking for a graphics package for your church, like Christmas at Home, there's one on there right now, and I'm putting another one on later today. So there'll be a couple different Christmas at Home graphics that you'll be able to go grab to do. If you're doing a live stream and just doing Christmas at Home, you can get all of that for free and save yourself a little time when I know we are all overworked this year and have done way more and put in way more hours than we need to, or wanted to maybe. So there's a lot of great stuff on there. So churchmediadrop.com. And then there's a ton of different Facebook groups out there, but the official ProPresenter user group on Facebook, I'm a part of that one. You'll find me on there, as well as a whole bunch of other church media related Facebook groups. Every once in a while, I join the storm that is known as Church Sound and Media Techs on Facebook. And
Oh man.
type into a conversation there, but I try to stay away from that.
It's a tangled web.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I know some people are in that one, but
sticky.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love to read, but I never comment.
Yeah.
Oh man, and sometimes people are just one-upping each other on that, or they're like, or they're critical, and it's just too much, man. It's too much. But
everybody knows everything.
yeah, exactly.
Yes, the world is full of experts, and none of them have any credentials.
Yes.
So
Right, exactly. Well, Brad, thanks so much for joining us today, man. I appreciate your time, and we need to get lunch soon. I know that we've been playing tag on that a little bit. I know you're in the middle of that build out for your kid space, but we should definitely get lunch soon. You're so close. When I found that out, I only found that out this year. I was like, wait, what? He lives in West Michigan? I'm like, wait, what? Grand Haven? What?
Where you been, Christian?
Yeah, where have I been? I know. Well, I'm
Brad
not
is
from
my
here,
secret
so.
little puppet.
He's a secret little puppet.
Which, and a little behind insider information, if you watch the ProPresenter 7 tutorials, at least the first batch of main tutorials, and you see my intro and outro, and I'm standing backstage with this giant video wall that's all lit up behind me and looks all crazy technical and cool, that is the backstage video wall at Central Wesleyan Church in Holland, Michigan. So I went down and shot all of my intros and outros down there. Paul gave me the keys, or didn't give me the keys, but let me in and helped set up some really nice lighting for me. And so that was really awesome of the guys over at Central to help me out.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, and I just love churches helping churches, man, and all of us being a resource to one another, because I love learning.
One big family, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I love it. So thanks again for coming on, man. And we'll definitely get lunch soon.
Sounds great.
All right. Awesome.